My friends and family have asked me, why a boundaries podcast? Like, who wakes up on Monday morning super excited to turn on the next episode of Boundaries? No, we're listening to true crime. Hi there, welcome to the Mind Your Boundaries podcast, episode number 1. I'm your host, Jessica Miller. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. This has been a labor of love in the making for a while, and many of you have sent so many words of encouragement, pushing me along, and I couldn't be more excited to launch this thing with you today. So what are we talking about today? In this episode, we're going to talk about the boundary basics. What is an actual boundary? Like, how do we define a boundary? What does it do for us? How do you set a boundary? I'm going to share a simple 3-step model that I use. And then I'll also share with you a boundary blunder that I had with my mom based on a very big mistake. I thought a boundary was something completely different than what it actually was. And I think a lot of you will relate to how I used to think a boundary was. So that's why I'm sharing this story with you. So I'll definitely talk about that. But before we even get into the foundation, like laying the foundation of boundaries and why we need to honor them and know about them and create them in our life, let's talk about the mission, like the mission of the podcast. Why even have a boundaries podcast? Isn't there anything else I could talk about? Yeah, but you're gonna come to find out boundaries are in every intricate facet of your life. They are what support you and the life you want to live. And I'm going to help you learn how to create healthy ones so you feel amazing. So we're going to learn about the mission, why a boundaries podcast, and then I'm going to just talk to you about what you can expect going forward. Like, what's it going to be like? And with that, let's talk about the mission. My mission is to help you live a better life by creating and communicating healthy boundaries. And I'm especially here for those of you that are like how I used to be, which was a self-identified people pleaser. I didn't want to disappoint anybody. And so I had zero respect for my own space, time, property, finances. Basically, all the resources I could give somebody or someone could take from me, I allowed them to take freely. And I wish I had somebody with a podcast like this back then to help me figure out how do I communicate boundaries in a kind way. There's lots of people out there that you can follow that set amazing boundaries, really great leaders. They've written fabulous books. Some of the ways that they can assert a boundary can come off a little harsh. And there's nothing wrong with the way that they're teaching. I just know for me, I would have needed something a little bit softer. And that is why I'm bringing my style of setting a boundary and why I think it's going to be helpful. Because so far on social media, you guys really love the way I deliver a boundary, because the way I deliver it, it truly feels like I'm holding the person in care and kindness while I'm being assertive. So it's like, take your medicine, I love you. and I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that same style so that you can set them as well in your life and not feel like an awful person or that you're punishing people. The boundaries we build together here are going to help you feel safe, help you feel balanced, and they're going to strengthen your relationships. Remember that last part, because a lot of times people have a misunderstanding that boundaries keep people away, they push people back, and that's not true. Boundaries are meant to keep us in relationships and keep our relationships strong. And so you'll learn that, and that should be very comforting, just hearing that little nugget, like, oh, okay, so I'm not putting up cement walls around me. I'm just putting up a picket fence with a nice gate that I can open whenever I want. So in the episodes to come, we're going to talk about real life examples. Even today, this is what we're going to talk about, real life examples. In some episodes, I'm going to be answering your questions. I do a lot of Q&A on social media, and that's probably how you've come to find the podcast here, to dive deeper with me. I'm going to be sharing personal stories. You'll come to find out, I have made so many mistakes. I'm human. I feel like we learn so much when we talk about our flaws or our imperfections or just like things that we've done wrong. I think that's where we connect. It's when I'm not showing up here as I have been born perfect. I've been perfect my whole life. I'm an expert and you can't tell me any different. Oh God, no, that is definitely not this podcast. I am just like, sometimes I'm just a walking hot mess. But I will tell you that no matter how many mistakes I have made, those mistakes have been the greatest gift. Because as you know, mistakes that you have had or failures, that's where we learn and grow. And so I've made mistakes, I've learned from it, I've grown from it. I've also have 10,000 hours helping clients with boundaries. And we'll get into that. Actually, we'll get into that right now. So I want to mention, we are recording our episodes in my front porch of our 100-year-old house. We are on a main street, so there's going to be lots of traffic. Once in a while, you're going to hear sirens. Once in a while, I'm going to be recording a podcast, and I'm going to have that awkward moment where the UPS guy, Chad, is going to walk up and deliver my Amazon packages, and I'm going to say hi because that's real life. Or someone's going to walk by, and I'm going to wave because it's just who I am. Why did I pick such a exposed area? Because you'll hear a lot of people that when they record a podcast, they're in their closet. It's very soundproof. I'm surrounded by windows and busy cars. I chose this location rather than my private practice, which is in basically a soundproof brick like building with just one window or a couple windows and carpet and all that stuff. It would have been a better location. But this place has been such a training ground for my boundaries since we've lived here. Like, so much about this home in general is where I've done my most growing, and I've been able to learn the most about myself in terms of boundary setting. And I just felt like it was fitting for me to at least start this podcast in my happy place, which is my front porch. I just love it out here. So that's why we're here. If you hear the sirens, just embrace it. If you hear car noises, Jake brakes, whatever, just be like, oh, it's part of the experience. It's like real life. We're FaceTiming. My friends and family have asked me, why a boundaries podcast? Like, who wakes up on Monday morning super excited to turn on the next episode of Boundaries? Like, no, we're listening to true crime. Like, come on. I am anyway. And the answer is really simple. I have spent the last 10 years in the mental health field, and it has been a true honor and privilege. And I've seen a lot of evolution in those 10 years. One of them being the acceptance of therapy. So now it's not as taboo. But as we have accepted therapy as a good thing, and the stereotype is changing, the need for therapists are increasing because more and more people are like, heck yeah, I want a therapist. Yeah, I want somebody to give me 50 minutes of undivided attention and just listen to me. How precious, right? So the demand is rising, especially after COVID. But the amount of clinicians there are to provide for everybody seeking out therapy, it's very unlevel. We can't keep up. So the industry is super saturated to the point that I don't even have a wait list anymore, which is sad, like, because my wait list is full. So not only am I full, my wait list is full. So then I have to refer out. But what I hate doing is knowing, like, because they give me a little tidbit of their story, and then when I give them 3 referrals to clinics, and I know the clinics that I'm referring them to, they have up to sometimes a 6-month wait list, which just kills me because as a service provider, I'm here to help people. And when someone reaches out for help, and then you know that you're sending them someplace that they're probably gonna have to wait another 6 months, and this isn't our area, this is Minnesota. It might not be the same where you are, so please don't be discouraged about therapy, but I'm just letting you know where I am, it is so saturated, and it's very difficult for me to constantly be referring out, knowing that they're just going to get to the next place and still have to wait. It's hard. So after lots of sleepless nights thinking about these calls that I'm getting, I asked myself a really critical question. Is there one common struggle woven in every case that I work with every person I work with? Is there one theme? Yes, it's boundaries, which makes sense because we are a culture, a society, and as individuals, we're not good at boundaries. Like, we were never taught. Our parents were never taught, so they didn't know to teach us. And in school, we're not taught to have our own boundaries, respect our intuition, follow our gut. We're not told to do that stuff. And so we land into adulthood just being expected to know how to balance everything, how to do everything. And it gets really complicated. And so there's no wonder why every person I work with over the last 10 years has needed help with boundaries. And that's why I'm here, because I believe I can be one to many and I can help more people by doing a podcast, by talking about common boundary myths, by going over examples and helping you identify and maybe even accept, you know what, I deserve some boundaries. Speaking of which, I want to share, I started my boundary journey 17 years ago. So for 17 years, I've been working on recovering from being a people-pleasing pushover. I've learned to manage and navigate and untangle enmeshed familiar relationships. We've weathered some pretty severe storms when it comes to grandparents not respecting our parental wishes. I've gone through so much. I've been helping clients for a decade figure out what boundaries I need to build a better life and how to communicate them in a very kind and clear way. And everything that I've helped them with, I'm going to transfer here and teach you how to do. That's why we're here. I firmly believe boundaries fix almost everything. Make sure you catch the almost, because I know there's going to be some people in the comments like, And if you don't believe me, if you're thinking, I made a list, let me share. If you're feeling lonely in your marriage, have some boundaries around whatever pulls you guys apart. If you're feeling overwhelmed at work, boundaries around how many projects you take on. Or let's say you're the one that gets asked all the time to pick up your coworker's slack, boundaries around saying no to other people's work. Feeling bad about yourself, maybe your self-confidence is just kind of in the dumps right now. Boundaries around health habits, boundaries around psychological talk, like how do you speak to yourself. Stressed out about how much you see your parents or your in-laws now that you have a new baby, boundaries. Overwhelmed by the amount of clutter that you have in your house, boundaries about what crosses the threshold of your door, like how much do you let into your home. Upset about how your tween talks to you, like let's say the hormones are starting to trickle in and disrespect is just running rampant in your house right now. Time to have a boundaries talk about respectful communication and what your expectations are from them. Overtired, feeling fatigued, irritable. Maybe you need some boundaries around your caffeine intake, going to bed earlier. Maybe you're scrolling too late, like you're doom scrolling, and you need to have some boundaries set around your evening scroll, not stroll. But you see what I mean? Boundaries are woven into everything we do in all facets of our life, and that's why it's important to talk about them. So how is this podcast going to work? Every week, I'm going to show up with inspiration, real stories, answering your questions. We're going to have boundary scripts, and I'm going to help you strategize and problem solve. we're going to do that together. But most importantly, it's you and me having a conversation, and we're building the lives we want by minding our boundaries. So are you ready to dive into your boundary journey? Let's start with the boundary basics, and then I'm going to share a story about my epic boundary blunder with my mother. One of the biggest myths about boundary setting was my fundamental belief. It's what I thought a boundary was. I thought that if I didn't like something that you were doing, I could just say, hey, I don't like it, knock it off. You would be then forced to change because I let you know, like, you're on notice, change your behavior because I don't like it. And if you cared enough about me, you would change. Talk about just laying a bed out for just breeding resentment. It was horrible. Like, I had it so wrong. However, it's a common myth for a reason. I think a lot of us have that wrong. A lot of us think a boundary is us telling others what to do, and it's not. A boundary begins and ends with us. So in the comments, before we dive into how I now define a boundary, I want you to tell me right now, in this moment, it's just a snapshot, how do you define a boundary? Like, what does a boundary mean to you? And so by the end, I want you I'll ask you again if your definition has changed a little bit, if it stayed the same, but I just want you to take a moment, pause the video, and just trust me, the more engaged you are with each episode, the more you're gonna get out of it. So let me know in the comments. And now that you're back, after you made that comment, a boundary is a self-imposed rule or limit that's meant to keep you feeling safe, balanced, and your relationship strong. That last part again, hopefully you're hearing that. A boundary begins and ends with you. So you can request somebody to work with you on a boundary. Like, you can say, hey, I need your cooperation on this because this is a boundary for me. And they can choose whether or not to work with you on it. If they choose not to, you need to know, what am I gonna do to hold my line? Like, what am I gonna do to hold this? Because they're not willing to work with me on it. We'll get into all of that with lots of examples as we go into today's episode. So don't worry if you're just like, how does that even work? Before my story, I'll just say the 3-step system that I use when I set a boundary. This method is so simple. All you do is you identify the boundary you need, and I'm going to teach you a hack today as well. Like, how do I even know when I need a boundary? I'll teach you. So we have step 1 is identify. Step 2 is communicate, which a lot of our episodes are going to include boundary scripts because that's very helpful. So identify, communicate, and 3 is hold the line. Like, you holding the line of your boundary. Okay, sit back, relax, and allow me to share a story about a boundary I thought I set with my mom, and I had it completely wrong because, again, I thought me setting a boundary was trying to tell her that she needed to change her behavior. My mom and I used to talk all throughout the day, and I'll show you. She was retired. She still is, but she was retired. I was a new mom of 2 babies, home, and needed an adult to talk to, so it worked out great. We would talk in the morning over coffee, and then maybe 15 minutes she would call me about a blue jay out her window. I would call her about something funny that the kids did or annoying that they did, and then she would text me something funny, and this just happened all throughout the day, nonstop. And it worked amazing until my kids got older, and I needed to figure out what to do with myself because I could now work and bring in some money into our home. And I created a business. So I created a business which needed my time, and then I created a second business. And it was confusing for my mom because I still was home the majority of the time because I only work at my private practice 2 days a week. So I'm still home, but I'm working at my business. So I needed to have these blocks of time where I could be productive. And I tried to have a conversation with my mom. I let her know I've identified a boundary that I need. I need to have time in my day where I can be productive. And so I went to her and communicated it with her and said, Mom, I have this boundary. I need your help with it. I need you to stop interrupting me all throughout the day because it's interrupting my work and it's just not efficient at all. And she seemed to understand. It was fine for a couple days and then it ramped back up again. And this went on for years. I tried several different things. I tried to put do not disturb on because with my businesses, I use my phone. So I tried the do not disturb. I tried to, and with the do not disturb, she got through. I don't know how. I even looked up to make sure she wasn't on my emergency contacts. I did everything. I tried to not look or respond. So if I saw her text, I'm just self-control. Or if she was calling me, nope, don't answer. But she's a widow on a lake, living alone, who doesn't like to ask for help. And so my worry brain would always get the best of me, and I'd quickly just be like, oh, hello, Mom? And then she'd be like, I found my sweater. She'd be like, ah. They're like, great, I'm working, gotta go. But all of this did was hurt our relationship because I didn't understand what a boundary actually was. I was still expecting her to change all this time. I said lots of passive-aggressive comments. It definitely put a strain on our relationship until, thank gosh, I figured out step number 3, which is it's my responsibility to change my behavior, not my mom's. So once I realized, oh my gosh, this was never on her to be responsible for changing her behavior. I asked for cooperation, but it was always on me. I called her that night at 5 o'clock at the end of my workday. I apologized, and then I told her my new plan. And some of you may never watch another episode after I tell you my plan, my boundary with my mom, but it works for us. Our relationship has gotten better. Literally, the next day, it just felt better. But this is now what we do. I talk to her in the morning. We have our morning coffee. She tells me what she's going to do that day. So we chat. And then when I hang up with my mom, I say, okay, I'll talk to you at the end of the day. She's like, okay, bye. And I hang up and I block my mom. I literally block her contact. And then I know. And then at 5 o'clock, I unblock and I call her up and we talk about our day. And she knows if she has an emergency, she can call my husband. So that works out perfectly. But I'm telling you, this boundary worked great. And once I realized that I was doing it all wrong, it definitely changed our relationship. Can you tell me a time when you set a boundary and maybe you thought of it like I thought of it, and so you were expecting them to change, and when they didn't, you felt defeated, maybe you resented them? I think if we can start talking about our boundary blunders, it would just be more relatable for everybody and we would feel less alone. And so that's why I'm going first, letting you know, look at me. So again, a boundary is a self-imposed rule or limit that's meant to keep you safe, balanced, and strengthen your relationships. And it begins and ends with you. Now that we know actually what a boundary is, let's talk about those 3 steps in more detail, like how you set a boundary. Step number 1 is about identifying that you need a boundary. Let's say you have identified that you really don't like unannounced guests, but your in-laws come over very often and they don't give you the heads up. So you've identified, we don't like unannounced guests. Now it's time to communicate. Time to tell your in-laws, you have to communicate with the affected parties, your new boundary, no more unannounced visits. So you say, hey, we love to have you over, and we just need a heads up before you come visit. So the next time before you come over, please call or text so we can let you know if we're up for guests. The next step, number 3, is hold the line. So in step number 2, you asked for cooperation. You didn't ask them to change at all. You just said, this is my boundary, please cooperate or work with me on it. But step 3, this is holding the line. And what this looks like is, let's say it's Wednesday night. You guys just sat down with your favorite pizza from your favorite pizzeria down the block, and you're about to dig in, and ding dong, and you just know it's going to be Kevin and Susan, your in-laws, and you get to the door and there they are. Here's what you say. Oh, Kevin and Susan, it's so good to see you guys. How are you doing? That's wonderful. I really wish you would have called first. We're not up for guests tonight, but how about we try to figure something out for the weekend? You weren't mean. You weren't unkind. All you simply did was hold the line. You just simply didn't let them cross the threshold and come in and eat pizza. Before we go through another example, I want to teach you a hack in case you're struggling to know, how do I know what boundaries I need? Like maybe it's been so long that you've just been shut down from listening to yourself or respecting your own needs that you don't even know where to begin. You have the most amazing tool always with you, and it's your gut. I call it your inner boundary coach. You have it right there all the time. And how you know that your coach speaks up because you feel this tension coming from just like your stomach area. And this isn't woo-woo, this is actually science, because the neurons in your gut that makes you feel like, ooh, this is not good, this is an unsettling, unsafe situation, those are the same neurons that tell you, you need a boundary here. And those neurons are connected to a part in your brain called the amygdala. And this is where the amygdala perceives any danger or anything in your environment that it's like you need to fight, flight, or freeze now. So with your inner boundary coach always with you, if you start to tune in more and more, like when you start to feel that tension radiating from your stomach, that's when you know like, ooh, this is when I need to set a boundary. And I'll highlight that in the following examples. Let's say your coworker comes over and asks, will you look at this report for me? It'll only take you 20 minutes and I really need your help. But history shows her reports never take you only 20 minutes. There's always a lot of errors. It takes you maybe an hour, 90 minutes, and you tend to feel used by her. So as you see her coming with her paperwork, you know exactly what's about to be asked of you. And she comes over and says, hey, do you think you could help me out for a little bit? And instantly that amygdala is like, and then your gut, your inner boundary coach is like blowing the whistle. It's trying to say, hey, so your stomach is tense so that now you know, okay, I've identified, I need a boundary here. Let's walk through the 3 steps. Step number 1, you know that you've identified a boundary. I need to stop taking on my coworker's work, like her projects. Number 2, now you have to communicate with her that this is your boundary. I'm sorry, Lisa, I'm swamped with my own projects and under the gun, and I won't be able to help you out. By chance, have you had an opportunity to ask Jackson? He's a great resource. You weren't mean. You let her know your boundary, like I can't take on your project. And then you also gave her an alternative suggestion, which was talk to Jackson. Number 3 is hold the line. So let's say she pushes because she's used to you caving. So she decides to come back stronger to see, are you really holding this boundary with me? Like you're really not going to help me? Oh, please, Sarah, you're my go-to person. I trust you. Like I can always count on you. What am I going to do if I can't have you help me? It's just 20 minutes. I promise. Your responses, like I said, Lisa, I'm under the gun with my own projects and they take priority. You'll have to ask somebody else for help. Like I mentioned, Jackson, he's amazing. Let's say you have had a very busy work week and you're just so excited to be cozy at home. There's no running around tonight. There's no extracurriculars. You're gonna snuggle with your kids, watch a family movie, and it's just gonna be chill. And then your mom calls and she wants to come visit. She's already been over a couple times that week, and you know you already have brunch planned on Sunday. Instantly when she says, can I come over? you feel this, like from your gut. That's your inner boundary coach blowing the whistle, right? Your amygdala's like, ah. Now you know, there we go. I have to set this boundary. So now you know, I've identified the boundary, which is I have to have a boundary around family time tonight. I need to protect that. Number 2, you communicate it with your mom. Oh, Mom, you know we always love having you over, but tonight won't work. We had a really busy week, and so we're just going to snuggle and chill as a family, but are we still on for Sunday brunch? Very nice and very kind. Number 3, hold the line. Let's say she pushes a little, and this is how that would work out. But sweetie, this is Mom talking. I bought those dance socks for the girls. Remember, you couldn't find them? I know you've been swamped at work and it's just been such a busy week. So I spent all morning, and believe it or not, after my 6th stop, I found them. And then I came home because, again, I know you've been busy, and I whipped up a batch of Daniel's favorite lasagna. Oh, right? So some of you might be thinking, are you going to crush her and say no again? Yes, I am. Because if I don't say no to my mom, I'm saying no to myself and my family, and it's not good for anybody. Mom, this is what I would say to her. Mom, you are the absolute sweetest person. You know how much I love you. Could you please hold on to the socks until Sunday? They can get by until then. And would you mind putting the lasagna in the freezer? Because Daniel would kill me if he knew he missed out on your famous, or your infamous Italian dish. How about a friend that calls you and you talk on your commutes home, and she tends to trend negative? Glass is always half empty, and it lowers your energy. You're bogged down for the rest of the night, and you want to set a boundary around how much negativity enters your conversation. So you see Natalie's name pop up on your phone. Your amygdala is like, fight, flight, or freeze. Your inner boundary coach ignites. You're starting to feel tension in your stomach. You're like, oh, that's where you know, okay, I've identified a boundary. Let's work through the 3 steps. Number 1, you've identified the boundary. I need less negativity in our conversations. Number 2, now you have to communicate it. So I actually wrote this down. Hey, Natalie, I have to talk to you about something. I'm getting really affected by how much we focus on the negative side of things in our conversation, and I'm going to need to ask that we focus on positive things. Number 3, hold the line. So the next day, when Natalie calls and you pick up and she starts talking about how bad her day was, how incompetent her boss is, and no matter how much you try to shift the conversation to the positive, she dives straight back into the negative. This is what you would say. Natalie, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to have to go. Like I said before, I really am affected by all this negativity, and it weighs me down for the rest of the night. I don't like that. I'm going to talk to you tomorrow, and hopefully we have some more positive things in our day to share. Have a great night, Natalie. I feel like that should give you a good idea of what a boundary is, how it works, how you set them, and how they strengthen your relationships. Because now you're not avoiding Natalie and her phone call because she knows what to expect with you. You're being transparent, and you're not resenting the fact that your mom came over as you're eating your favorite pizza because she's there. You love your mom and you're excited to see her on Sunday. I want to ask you to share your definition now about a boundary. So in the beginning I asked, what do you think, or what's your definition of a boundary? And now, has it shifted at all? And maybe it stayed the same. Maybe you always knew what a boundary was. If that's the case, share like one takeaway that you have from today's episode. Again, the more you engage, the more you're going to get out of it. If this is a passive podcast in your ear, like I do with my murder podcast episodes, you're not going to get as much out of it. So you get in what you put out. You get out what you put in. To recap, a boundary is a self-imposed rule or limit that is meant to keep you safe, balanced, and strengthen your relationship. It begins and ends with you. The simple 3-step method that I use is to set my boundaries is I identify, I communicate, then I hold the line. tune in next episode where I take you through the most essential exercise that I do with all my clients, and it helps them lay out how they want to live their life to feel the most fulfilled, content, and happy. And this may seem weird to you, but trust me, in this exercise, your boundaries, or the boundaries you need based on what you value, are going to just leap off the page. And you're going to say, oh, I need a boundary around that, and that, so then I can protect this idea of what I need based on my values to live a fulfilling life. So make sure you don't miss that. And until I see you in the next episode, make sure you mind your boundaries.